The Athletic has completed their list of the top prospect pools in the NHL, and they ranked Montreal number 6, along with a bunch of disrespect going towards one prospect in particular. But before we get into that, I wanted to talk about Steve Ellis, who works for Daily Faceoff, and he didn't ask me anything on Reddit, and he seems to be extremely high on Habs goaltender Jacob Fowler to be a future starter, maybe even star in the NHL. So you'll want to stick around for all of that on this edition of Habs Digest. And as we get into the first topic here, quick reminder to hit subscribe if you're one of the thousands who hasn't already. We'd really appreciate it. That's it. Let's just dive into Jacob Fowler. Now, for those of you who don't know, Jacob Fowler was the number 69 overall pick, nice, in this past NHL draft, and he seems to have a lot of good potential. And Steve Ellis, I got his title over here, the associate editor and prospect analyst for Daily Faceoff, one of the biggest hockey websites out there, didn't ask me anything. And a few people asked him about Jacob Fowler, and I wanted to go over his responses. So let's look at this. He says he does believe Jacob Fowler can be a starting goalie in the NHL. When he's on his game, he's really on his game. There were many cases where I was trying to focus on someone else and he stole the action. Really excited about this group. And to me, as a goaltender, that's one of the best compliments you can receive. When you as a goaltender are stealing the show, when you're there to look at offensive prospects who are supposed to be in there scoring goals, setting up other teammates, and you're like, oh, wow, that was a great play, but the goalie stole the show, that's when you know a goalie has very, very solid potential. Jacob Fowler had an insane stretch this past year, but I think it was the Youngstown Phantoms. He was just on the ball all the time. He had a sub-2 goals against average in the playoffs. And Steve actually goes on to say he loved him last year. Thought he looked great at the WJSS. Big year of college, and he should get at least get a start at the World Juniors. And he actually wrote an article on Daily Face. If you guys want to go check it out, the link is here. I'm sure you can search it up. Steve Ellis, Jacob Fowler. He's one of the few from the 2023 draft class with starter potential. And that's exactly what Montreal needs. They need a starting goalie of the future. This guy was phenomenal last year. Now, there are some concerns with his height at 6'1", but the fact that he is so elite, and it's not only Steve Ellis who has said this, there's plenty of other people, plenty of other analysts who have said that Jacob Fowler's positioning and his knowledge of the game are really, really good. And like Steve said, when he's on, he's really on, and it's almost impossible to put a puck past him. And actually, before we get into this whole Habs prospect ranking, they actually mentioned Jacob Fowler, so I'm going to kind of do a nice little transition here from their ranking of Fowler from Steve Ellis's. So we look at Jacob Fowler. Of course, born November 24, 2004. He's 6'1", 222, so he's not a skinny goalie. Like, he's a big guy. He can fill up the net, and he's still agile. He's projected to play NHL games. His hockey sense is above NHL average. They have skating at NHL average. They say he's very athletic, has strong technique and hockey sense, makes a lot of tough saves, and does so while in control of his body. He makes a lot of the difficult stops while being a dialed-in goalie who doesn't let soft goals in. But then you go on to say, like, the only issue is he's 6'1", but he grew on Corey Pronman as the season went along. He says, well, he looks quite athletic. He does need to get his fitness level under control. Well, yeah, okay. Very athletic, stops the hard shots, makes incredible saves, but he's below average height for an NHL goalie. He'd be tied for the shortest NHL goalie right now, actually, if he came into the league at 6'1". And I understand 222, it's not all muscle, but if you're extremely athletic, at 222 pounds at 6'1", like, an NHL conditioning team is going to get you, or even the AHL, or even NCAA is going to get you into shape. And, like, for those to be the main concerns about Jacob Fowler, I think it outlines the fact that this guy has incredible talent. And that skill, that hockey sense, is something you can't always teach to people. You can teach people how to get in shape. So that's why I truly think Jacob Fowler is currently the Habs' best goalie prospect, and why he probably might be the Habs goalie of the future. But now let's get into the meat of the video, right? What we all wanted to talk about, and that's the Habs were ranked number 6th best prospect pool. Now, is this good? Is this bad? Honestly, I'm going to take the opinion that it's about right. I know some people might be upset with that, but realistically, it's about right. I mean, they're ranked number 6. The only teams above them, I don't know if I'm going to be able to name all of them off the top of my head. I know Buffalo, New Jersey, I know Columbus, I know Chicago, and I think Anaheim. I think that was the 5 that were ahead of Montreal. And of all those teams, you know what? I think it's kind of fair that Montreal sliding in number 6. But what is very interesting about this is they had Detroit at number 8, and again, Buffalo at number 3. So the only team in the Atlantic Division ranked ahead of Montreal in Corey Pronman's rankings is Buffalo. And that's pretty fair, right? Buffalo has a very, very solid prospect pool. But for Montreal to be basically there at that top of the Atlantic Division with the Sabres in this ranking, boy, it is amazing. But I wanted to make something clear. It's not just prospects. He says prospects. I mean, that's what it shows there. But it's under 23 years old, as in you have to be under the age of 23 by, I think, September or something like that. So someone like Cole Caufield, as you saw in that picture, actually counts towards this, which helps Montreal's ranking. So Montreal, who did he have as their top prospects? Well, he had Cole Caufield and Juraj Slafkovsky as the number 1 and 2. He had Kirby, Dach, Cayden, Guhle in there, and Alex Newhook at number 6. But the number 1 person I wanted to talk about, we just mentioned Jacob Fowler was maybe ranked a bit low, but the number 1 person I wanted to talk about that kind of makes Montreal's ranking maybe lower than it very well could be, no surprise to anyone, it's Lane Hutson. Now, Corey Pronman, amazing writer, does a lot of awesome analysis, but his problem is he's really, really low on Lane Hutson, and he constantly says, I get 5'8", 148. He's actually 5'9" now. We know he's not 5'8" anymore, so I don't know why he didn't update that. Also, side note, he didn't even have Logan Mailloux in his top 20. He had Jan Mysak above Logan Mailloux in this ranking, even though in past articles he had Mailloux in his top 15. Don't really understand. It seems like there really wasn't a lot of, unless he's really low on Mailloux all of a sudden, I feel like there wasn't a lot of proofreading in this article. But anyway, he says Hutson had one of the best 18-year-old seasons ever, blah, 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 blah. He's very elusive, but they said the size is the main issue. And how will he defend the NHL size and speed? Coaches may need to use Hutson carefully. His pure offense, quote, could lead to him having an NHL career and carrying a power play. Carrying a power play, sure, that's kind of what Lane Hutson's projected to do, but for Corey Pronman to be so low as to say, like, he could have an NHL career at his size, I think that's just insane. Because, again, there are players in the NHL who are his size. Maybe not quite as light yet, but Lane Hutson, again, was 18. Like, let's just picture Lane Hutson in a year at the age of 19 or 20. And let's say he's 5'9", and he's bulked up to like 165, 170. That is easily NHL size. Captain of the Minnesota Wild, defenseman Jared Spurgeon is that size. Cole Caufield is smaller than Lane Hutson is right now, while definitely a bit more muscular. And again, it's the defensive position I know, but someone like Matt Grzelcyk, right? Very small. Adam Fox isn't huge. He's like 5'11", right? On skates. So this whole like, oh, he's so small, I don't know if he'll even have an NHL career is absolutely insane to me, because if Lane Hutson, if his skill was on a player who was listed at 5'10", instead of 5'8", and in most places 5'9", I think we'd be seeing him very, very differently. Again, the weight is certainly an issue. You want him to bulk up, but come on, right? But all things considered, let's talk about this ranking. Is number 6 fair? Yes, I think number 6 is fair. It's kind of hard to say that Montreal's above someone like Chicago, who has Connor Bedard, someone like Anaheim, of course, with Trevor Zegras and many other young players. Right? Someone like Buffalo, I mean, I think Tage Thompson, I'm not sure actually if he's still under 23, but of course you still have like Owen Power, right? You still have like Dahlin, who's still quite young. Like, I'm actually not sure if he's 23 either. Didn't really proof check that, but whatever. But the thing is, you know, Montreal at number 6 is an amazing thing. Them and Buffalo are the top 2 in the Atlantic Division, and now we're in this era where the Atlantic Division is about to shift, right? We know Tampa, they did just re-sign Brandon Hagel to a long extension, but their good players are hitting that point of the aging curve where that team's going to start declining. Boston, we've already seen Patrice Bergeron, David Krejci retiring. They really have no center depth. They're going to start taking a dive. The Toronto Maple Leafs with their ridiculous contract situation, will they win now? I'm not sure, but in 3-4 years when Montreal's ready to compete, it sure doesn't seem like they'll be ready. They'll start diving down too. So it's these teams like Montreal, like Ottawa with Brady Tkachuk and Tim Stützle, like Buffalo, Owen Power, Rasmus Dahlin, Tage Thompson, like, you know, these other teams in Detroit as well, Mo Seider, Lucas Raymond, they're going to be jumping up. And for Montreal to already be the second best team in 23 and younger players in this division, with ample cap space in the future to sign pretty much whoever they're going to want in the coming years, I think it just puts Montreal in an amazing position. So even though it's number 6, you can't be that upset about it. That'll do it for this news edition of Habs Digest. If you enjoyed, leave a like, comment, subscribe to the channel. We're on the road to 10,000 subs. We really appreciate your support. I'm Josh Gosse. We'll catch you in the next one.